All right, let's dive right into this breathtaking explainer of Herman Melville's notoriously dense classic, Moby Dick. Now, I know for a lot of people this book is basically an intimidating mountain of text, but today, we're transforming it into a structured, chapter-by-chapter animated book summary. Whether you're 15 or 50, the themes hiding just beneath these ocean waves are deeply applicable to our everyday, modern lives.
To make this massive story a bit more accessible, here's our agenda. We're going to break down the first 59 chapters into bite-sized phases. We've got setting sail, the Pequod's crew, Ahab's obsession, whales and omens, ocean mysteries, and finally our conclusion on the eternal chase.
Kicking things off with Section 1, covering chapters 1 through 15, setting sail.
So our journey actually begins entirely on land, with what is arguably one of the most famous opening lines in literally all of literature, "Call me Ishmael." Ishmael decides to go to sea as a sort of mental health reset. He tells us he has this drizzly November in his soul. To put it in modern terms, Ishmael is burnt out, he's depressed, and he's looking at the ocean like it's a giant salty reset button for his anxiety.
As you'll see here, Ishmael's physical journey maps out a total shift from the anxiety of the modern city of Manhattan to the Spouter-Inn in New Bedford, and finally, he arrives at the legendary, boisterous whaling hub of Nantucket to sign his whaling papers. It's a geographical shift that completely mirrors his desire for an internal, mental shift.
And along this journey, an incredible, total odd couple friendship is formed. On one side, we have Ishmael, our restless, anxious, overthinking modern man. And on the other, Queequeg. He's a tattooed harpooneer who, yes, happens to be a cannibal, but is astonishingly serene, content, and deeply philosophical. Queequeg teaches our anxious narrator a crucial lesson right off the bat. True peace and human connection can be found anywhere, and very often in the people you least expect.
Moving right along to Section 2, chapters 16 through 31, the Pequod's crew.
Now, before we meet the captain, we've got to meet the officers. I actually love to view the ship's mates as three completely different styles of middle management trying to run a highly deadly workplace. First, you have Starbuck. He's the cautious, moral center. He actively respects the danger of whales. Then there's Stubb. He's your happy-go-lucky, indifferent pragmatist who literally laughs in the face of danger. And finally, Flask. This guy is aggressive, totally fearless, and views these majestic leviathans as nothing more than overgrown water rats. It's a fascinating look at how different human personalities cope with constant, life-threatening stress.
But hovering above this varied management team is Captain Ahab. For the first several days of the voyage, Ahab is just this unseen, moody dictator with an ivory leg made of whalebone. He literally hides in his cabin, pacing endlessly. Melville brilliantly uses Ahab's absence here to build up this intense, psychological suspense among the crew, and for us, the reader.
Which brings us to Section 3, chapters 36 through 42, Ahab's obsession.
Okay, the suspense finally breaks. Ahab steps onto the quarterdeck and reveals his incredibly dark purpose. In a chilling, absolutely magnetic speech to the crew, Ahab justifies his quest for revenge with this incredible quote: "If man will strike, strike through the mask." You see, he views the physical world as a mere pasteboard mask hiding a deeper, malicious, unseen truth. He isn't just angry about losing his leg. He truly believes the universe itself is actively insulting and attacking him.
And crucially, to Ahab, Moby Dick is not simply a biological sperm whale. No, he is Ahab's delirious projection of all the malicious, invisible, and evil forces in the entire universe. Think about it like this. Ahab isn't just hunting an animal. He has fallen down a toxic, almost internet-style rabbit hole of conspiracy and rage, projecting all of humanity's existential dread onto one single, white creature.
And the scary part? He doesn't go down this hole alone. Ahab's toxic tactics are an absolute masterclass in manipulation. He completely bypasses Starbuck's moral and financial objections. He unites the crew through this frantic, ceremonial drinking ritual, binding them to his supernatural revenge. And he deliberately sacrifices all mortal and financial interests for his grudge. It's a terrifying analogy for how easily a charismatic leader can infect others with their own obsession and drag a whole community into a doomed pursuit.
All right, Section 4. Diving into chapters 43 through 54, Whales and Omens.
So as the ship sails onward, Melville masterfully blends the high-stakes plot with some heavy encyclopedic facts.
You might have actually heard of the famous cetology chapter. Cetology is simply the branch of zoology relating to whales. You can basically think of this chapter as a 19th century Wikipedia deep dive. Ishmael tries to painstakingly categorize these massive leviathans by treating them like books in a library. Folios, octavos, the whole shebang. Why? Well, because using logic and categorization is just the human mind's way of trying to understand and control a totally chaotic, uncontrollable universe.
And honestly, that feeling of lost control was completely justified. The reality of the 19th century whaling fishery was terrifying. We're talking constant unreported deaths, boats utterly pulverized by whales, and spreading like wildfire through the fleet were rumors of Moby Dick's literal immortality. Fishermen shared these wild, superstitious tales that this ubiquitous white monster could somehow be in multiple oceans at the exact same time.
To make matters even worse, the crew hears a secret, whispered tale from a passing ship called the Town Ho. It's a dark story of a mutiny that is suddenly interrupted by a deadly, seemingly divine intervention from Moby Dick himself, who outright kills the wickedest man on board. It acts as a massive, totally unheeded omen of the white whale's lethal, almost supernatural power.
Moving into Section 5, covering chapters 55 through 59, Ocean Mysteries.
Let's dive a little deeper into these final chapters of our summary. Ishmael uses a brilliant metaphor here that really resonates. He asks us to contrast the docile earth, which is green, gentle, safe, and totally known to us, with the appalling ocean. He describes the sea as masterless, cannibalistic, and concealing terrifying, remorseless truths beneath its beautiful blue surface. It's a really stark reminder of how our human control over nature is a very, very thin, fragile illusion.
The sheer terror of this unknown ocean is perfectly captured in Chapter 59. The crew is totally on edge, and suddenly they spot this massive, ghostly white mass rising from the deep. They think it's Moby Dick, but no, it turns out to be a giant squid, a stiletto-like phantom that brings this preternatural stillness to the sea. It's a true heart-pounding jump scare right in the middle of the ocean, proving for sure that the sea holds monsters far weirder than they could ever imagine.
And finally, Section 6, our conclusion, the eternal chase.
As we wrap up this animated summary journey, let's establish what you should really take away from all this. Because this story isn't just about a 19th century fishing trip. It's a timeless mirror for our own behavior. First, escaping modern anxiety requires finding inner peace, much like Queequeg does, rather than just changing your geography. Second, as we see with Ahab, toxic grudges and obsessions will absolutely consume you and everyone you drag down with you. And finally, humanity's control over nature is and always will be a fragile illusion.
So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to apply to your own life today. What is your white whale? Seriously, what unattainable goal, past slight, or toxic obsession are you endlessly chasing across the oceans of your life? And more importantly, is it really worth the cost? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep your weather eye open.